Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle to our regular council meeting of Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Obviously, absent is Mayor Meloche. I'm Deputy Mayor Akpat, and I'll be acting as the chair today. Also unavailable is Councillor Desjardins. We do have quorum, and we're about to begin. I'd read the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of the Caldwell First Nations of the Three Fires Confederacy and the original peoples of Point Pelee and Pelee Island and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of all other nearby First Nation communities and all original peoples on Turtle Island. We'll now have a moment of silent reflection, and we will rise following there for the national anthem. Please rise for the playing of O Canada. We'll begin by adoption of the agenda. Recommendation of the November 12th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented. Looking for mover and a seconder. Councillor Riccio Spagnolo, Councillor Reno. Call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Disclosures of pecuniary interest amongst my council colleagues on the items on the agenda. Should you determine that later on during the meeting you have a pecuniary interest, please feel free to make us aware. Item D, the adoption of minutes. The minutes before you of the regular council meeting held October 22nd, 24 be adopted as present. Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Riccio Spagnolo. Call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Mayor's comments. As I said, her worship is away, so the only comments I'll bring is thanking the residents of the town of LaSalle for attending Cenotaph Park yesterday for a wonderful Remembrance Day ceremony. It was nice to look out and see so many young people, as well as our senior veterans in attendance. It speaks to the contribution of our members, and it also speaks to the caring and compassion of those who live in the municipality of the town of LaSalle. Public meeting hearings or other hearings we don't have. We're going to start off with a presentation. And I say this going off script because, as you can imagine, when the mayor is gone, the last thing I want to do is embarrass my colleagues or myself. But it's very, very nice for me to be able to make this presentation. Mr. Carson Vuk attending in person to receive an award, and I'll read about this young man. I'm pleased to introduce an inspiring young man, Carson Vuk, who's making a remarkable impact on our community. 16 years old, he embarked on a 3-day run from Windsor to Sarnia to raise funds and awareness for ALS research, honoring the memory of his beloved grandmother who passed away from the disease. His dedication to this cause exemplifies the spirit of resilience and compassion that we value in our community. It's my honor to ask him to come forward and present him with a certificate recognizing his efforts to inspire others and make a difference in the fight against ALS. Thank you for your incredible commitment. We are very proud of you here in the town of LaSalle. Carson, please come forward. So we're going to move to staff reports and correspondence for council's actions. Item 1, the proposed 2025 budget release and highlights. Mr. Dale Langlois, the Director of Finance, will present the report. Mr. Langlois, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and members of council. So before you have our report here and the high-level detail of the changes from the 2024 budget, as well as what's included in the capital budget for 2025, the proposed budget. So this year definitely was a challenging year. You know, there's still a lot of pressures. You know, inflation's starting to go down, but we're still playing catch up from the past 3 years where we've had significant rapid inflation. Over the past 3 years, we didn't put that all in at once, so we are still playing catch up. But it is nice to see that the rate of inflation is starting to decrease. Included in the budget, we've included all of the master plans that have been approved by council over the years. Our contractual obligations, as I mentioned, inflationary pressures, and then legislated pressures as well. So this draft budget takes into account kind of everything. We have, as part of the finance team, we have reduced it already by $900,000. So the results of this proposed budget the impact on the average home in LaSalle would be a $209 increase per year, which is about just over $17 a month. Yeah, we'll go through the capital budget in detail during the budget deliberation sessions, as well as the operating budget, which are scheduled to occur December 4th and then December 5th and 6th if necessary. This number doesn't include the county budget increase or the education increase. At the time of writing this report, those rates were not released. Since then, the education rate's been released. It's going to not have a change from the prior year. That's consistent with the past several years. The county at this point in time, we're not sure where they're going to end up, but it'll likely be somewhere between the estimated 4 and 6% included in the report. But with that being said, our budget is bare bones. There is not a lot to cut. If we moving forward during the deliberation sessions, if council wishes to reduce the operating budget, there's going to be some tough choices to make. There's going to be some consequences. You know, in previous years, when we were having high interest rates, that's an example where, hey, we could add some more interest revenue. Interest rates are starting to go down right now, so I wouldn't want to raise interest revenue anymore. We've kind of lucked out the last couple of years where we could find some savings or some revenue increases, or we've had some increase in government grants like the OCIF grant in past years. This year, that's bare. We don't have any of that, and we factored it all into the budget. So if there is some reductions, we will come back, but there will be some consequences which we'll lay out to council in detail, whether it be pushing back projects, reducing level of service in different ways. So, but if there's any questions, be happy to answer.
Looking to my council colleagues, you received a copy of the budget. Are there any questions for Mr. Langlois at this moment in time? Thank you very much, Councillor Carrick. Seeing none, the recommendation before us is the report of the Director of Finance dated October 25th, 2024, Report FIN 26-2024, regarding the proposed 2025 budget release and highlights be received. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Reno, seconded by Councillor Riccio Spagnolo. I'll call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion is carried. Street name request, item 2, for the Woodview Estates subdivision. Ms. Christina Bursick, the Manager of Planning and Development, will be presenting this report. Ms. Bursick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just have my presentation about, there we go. All right, so before you up on the screen is the Woodview subdivision. It's a subdivision that is located just west of Disputed Road and south of LaSalle Woods Boulevard. I've inserted the snippet of the draft plan of subdivision into the aerial photo as best I could. Again, it's just for presentation purposes. It's not perfect or to perfect scale. The request before us today is to name the streets within the draft plan approved subdivision known as Woodview. The developer of the subdivision has provided two names. They've requested Street A, as shown up on the screen. They've requested Street A be named Laier, L-A-I-E-R, Lane, and that Street B be named Tabib Street. Staff have reviewed the requested street names and they have no concerns. However, if council were to decide to not support the developer's requested street names, there is a list of street names available from our street naming policy that council may choose from. And I'm available for any questions. I also wanted to add that the developer, Dr. Tabib, is also available online, I believe, if council may wish to direct any questions towards them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bursick. Looking to my council colleagues for any questions for our Director of Planning and Development. Seeing none. Councillor Carrick.
Just a quick comment. So I'm in support of this tonight, but in the future, if we have more than one name, I think at least one of the names should be drawn from the list that we have from the past. At least we start looking at some of that stuff. Otherwise, why do we have a list? At the end of the day, we can get rid of the list and just whatever the developers want to bring forward is fine with me too. But then I would suggest we get rid of the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Anyone else? Before us then, we have a recommendation that the report of the Manager of Planning and Development dated October 15th, 2024, report PD 37-2024 regarding the naming of streets within the Woodview Estates subdivision be received, and that either Street A be named Laier Lane and Street B be named Tabib Street as provided by the owners of the subdivision 2601-370 Ontario Inc. as depicted on the plan, the draft plan of subdivision. Or, council, we have a choice. Council selects an alternative from the list provided in the LaSalle Street naming policy. Looking to my colleagues as to how they'd like to proceed. Mr. Carrick.
We can move the names that are brought forward by the developer.
Moved by Councillor Carrick, seconded by Councillor Reno, that the names as brought forward by the developer, Laier Lane and Tabib Street, be approved for the subdivision. Motions before council. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Reno, seconded by Councillor Carrick. I'll call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Item 3, Fields Court Draft Plan of Subdivision T05-2024 and the removal of holding symbol Z06-2024. Once again, to you, Ms. Bursick, the Manager of Planning and Development, will present this report.
Thank you again, Deputy Mayor. So the application received is for a draft plan of subdivision for a subdivision known as Fields Court, as well as a removal of the holding symbol under file Z06-2024. So as depicted up on the screen, the property is located east of the end of Fields Avenue and east of Lafferty, of the Lafferty drain. Well, actually the drain dissects part of the parcel. And it's also just south of the elementary school located just north of the site as well. There is the woodlot, which is owned by the town of LaSalle to the east of the parcel. I also wanted to mention on the onset that there's been a number of comments received from the public on this application. The comments have been provided to both the applicant as well as to council prior to the meeting. Comments received weren't provided before the report due to the timelines to provide reports to council services for the production of the agenda. However, again, like I mentioned, council did receive those comments. And I just wanted to, I've tailored my presentation to cover and speak to many of the comments that were provided as well. And just in general, there was concerns of transparency, concerns on proximity to the school, pedestrian safety and increased traffic, infrastructure capacity, and as well as environmental and wildlife impacts. So up on the screen, I've included a buffer map, which is very common what we use in planning when we prepare our mailing lists, if you will, for all properties in which we need to prepare mailing addresses for when we mail out the letters for the notices of the meeting and the application. So as you can see, the subject lands are outlined in the red, and the buffer map, which is the blue shaded area, includes all property owners which were provided the notice in the mail. Now, again, on top of the notice that was provided in the mail, as normal, we posted the notice on the town's website. We've also published the notice in the Windsor Star, and we've also sent the notice to required external agencies and specified persons. Now up on the screen, I've included a snapshot of our zoning bylaw map. Again, the subject parcel is outlined in red, and you'll see it's got a hatching across it. That's because the property, while it's zoned R1, residential zone 1, it also has a holding symbol on it. So as I mentioned when I introduced the application, before you tonight is also the holding removal symbol application, as well as the draft plan of subdivision. And as you can see to the north, it's a purple shaded color. That's because that's the elementary school, which is zoned institutional. The other surrounding lands that are also shaded yellow in likeness of the subject lands are zoned R1 residential. And then we have to the east the NE, or natural environment zoned lands. Those are the town-owned woodlot lands. There's a section of a dotted strip of lands just south of that NE, and that's deferred urban. At this time, there's no planned development or anything for that site. And then there's the RE, the recreational lands as well, encompassing to the west and portions of the south of the lands, and those are also town-owned lands. And so with regards to the zoning is R1 residential, which permits as of right single residential dwellings as well as semi-detached dwellings. And before us is a draft plan of subdivision application for the request to develop 14 semi-detached lots. Part of the application, the developer was required to submit a number of studies, and I'm just gonna summarize. So a functional servicing report was provided, an archaeological stage 1-2 assessment was provided, and no archaeological significance was identified. Species at risk screening and addendum report was also supplied. This assessment was done by a qualified biologist. It resulted in a number of recommendations that developer will be required to do prior to any site alteration or the sale of the lots. There's requirements in here included such as temporary exclusion fencing during the construction activity time, as well as in permanent fencing along the rear yard lot lines of the properties. As well as some habitat enhancement to the northeast corner of the site. Also, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry did review the assessment and determined that, subject to the implementation of the recommended mitigation measures, was adequate to address the Endangered Species Act. So up on the screen, I've somewhat sketched to the best of my ability an image to identify the existing sidewalks, trails, and also to include the location of the drain the existing drain. So once again, the red outline is the subject lands, and the yellow dashed line are all the existing sidewalks and trails. So as you can see, there is a portion of trails running through the parcel already to the east of the Lafferty Drain, and I mean, it's self-explanatory. They're pretty much all leading for people to get to the school. The development of the pedestrian pathway, it will also, the proximity to the school for this proposed subdivision will allow children living in these homes a quick and safe way to get to school as well. And on the next slide, so I've inverted the subdivision drawing just so that it matches the previous drawings for the aerial photo. Now I've added the green dashed line, which is the sidewalk that is proposed to be developed along with the subdivision. You can see the 14 lots. I've highlighted the Lafferty Drain in blue, and the existing sidewalks and paths are yellow. So the proposed subdivision will not be removing any sidewalks or paths that currently exist. In fact, it'll be adding an additional sidewalk as per development standards to accommodate the subdivision. You'll also notice, of course, Fields Avenue will continue into the subdivision. In fact, there's will be a minor correction. The road won't be continued to be named Fields Court. It will be continued to be named Fields Avenue, and it'll end in a cul-de-sac into the subdivision. I also want to include that Fields Avenue, as it continues over the Lafferty Drain, drainage improvements were required, and this was to date completed on June 25th, 2024. The drain improvements, the work wasn't completed, but the Drainage Act approvals were completed under bylaw 8873. And surrounding the subdivision lots, you'll notice the, I guess, pinkish shaded area, reddish pinkish shaded area. Those are blocks 15 through 19, which will be conveyed to the town for the drainage maintenance and environmental protection areas. And I've just included, I guess I stitched in the subdivision lands to the best of my ability as well, as much to scale as possible, just so you can see from an aerial photo that the woodlot, the trees are far to the east behind the rear yards of the proposed subdivision lots. You can see how the sidewalks are running through the property, the existing sidewalks and paths, and the green dashed new proposed sidewalk as part of the subdivision lands. And last but not least, I just want to conclude that, of course, the provincial planning statement was reviewed. The County of Essex official plan, the Town of LaSalle official plan were all reviewed, which the proposed subdivision was in conformity and compliance with. And a little bit about the holding symbol, of course, as usual. It'll be, the holding provision is in place until administration is satisfied that there's adequate municipal servicing available, and that the subdivision agreement is in place and approved by council. So once the draft plan approval is finalized by the county and the subdivision agreement is negotiated, then the bylaw will come back for the holding symbol removal. I'm available for any questions that council may have, and I also wanted to add that Mr. Frank Fazio and Ralph Mayo are available if council may direct them for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bursick. What I'd ask council to do is hold their questions. I'd ask Mr. Fazio, Mr. Mayo to come so that we can get a more wholesome view before council asks questions, if that's all right with my colleagues. Thank you.
Is it on? Yep. Good evening, your worship and members of council. Christina did a good job in describing the development. I'll give you a little bit of background regarding this property. The owners were part owners of a larger piece of land, which was on both sides of the Lafferty Drain. About 20 years ago, they developed the west side for a residential subdivision of about 180 lots. At which time we conveyed to the town approximately 4 acres in the conservation area for the extension of, I believe it's Mayfair. About 7, 8 years ago, when the owners wanted to pursue development of this property, we entered into some negotiation with the town where we would convey to them all of the bush, which is about 20 acres, in addition to the 3.5 acres that we conveyed about 20 years ago to the town. In exchange, we received 2 lots in another section of the town. I understand that the town needed for this, for conservation and for future implementation of the traffic study. It took us about 7 years to complete the exchange because the property that we got in exchange needed environmental approvals, and it took about 7 years to get those approvals. So about 3 years ago, we completed the exchange, and we proceeded to the 4 acres that we were left with. We obtained the Ministry of the Environment consent to proceed, and we met with the town and the county, and they gave us a list of reports that had to be prepared. Those reports have been prepared. Mr. Mayo is here, who can answer to the servicing reports. Probably the major item was the update of the environmental approval that we retained Goodban and Associates to further study this to make sure that there were no negative impact on the conservation area. He prepared a report. He prepared more than one report, and all of the recommendations of that report are included in the servicing drawings, and Mr. Mayo can speak to them. But he made sure that there was sufficient separation with the conservation area. We had to increase the buffer area. There's permanent and temporary fencing. We have to plant various types of vegetation for the wildlife to enjoy. So all of this was completed not too long ago, and the reports were approved in principle by all the agencies, and we are here before you tonight to receive your approval so that the county can continue with the application process. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. The only thing that I don't understand, and maybe Peter Maher can explain, there's a trail on this land. This is private land. And I noticed that some of the people that sent in letters were complaining about this trail, this asphalt pathway. I don't know how that asphalt pathway ever got on that property. It's private property. This development, of course, will resolve the problem because we're going to convey to the town that property. But as of right now, that's still private property. Perhaps maybe people think it's part of your trail. I'm not too sure.
Sir, I'm just going to rise on a point. Your question's been noted, and it'll be for council to ask that question
Yeah.
for administration when council does ask their question. So I've noted it, sir, and one of my colleagues will ask that question, or administration will answer it in anticipation of it
Yeah.
being asked.
So we'll answer any questions you may have. I don't wanna repeat everything Christina said.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayo, do you have any items to add to Mr. Fazio's presentation, sir?
I will only confirm that all of the servicing issues have been resolved. ERCA has given approval in principle to stormwater management and stormwater quality control. And to emphasize, Anthony Goodban has been a slave driver on this project, driving me crazy because I couldn't do any of my work without getting his approval first. So every one of Mr. Goodman's recommendations and requirements have been incorporated into the servicing drawings, and they're part of the proposed recommendation this evening, and they will be in fact implemented.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Fazio. We do have one delegate from the citizens, Kristen Lawson, a resident attending in person. She's got some written comments that I understand my colleagues have. Ms. Lawson, if you'd like to come up to the microphone. Leighton, sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry.
A lot of the questions that we do have been addressed, thank you. But I just wrote a little something here and I'm gonna read it. So I'd like to say good evening, members of council. First, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening regarding the proposed extension of Fields Avenue and the construction of 14 semi-detached units. As a concerned resident of this community, I have spoken with many residents and homeowners, specifically Fields, Geniac, Sacred Heart, and on International Streets. We all share legitimate concerns and questions about the potential impact of this development. As members of this community, we would like to raise several points for your consideration, particularly with respect to safety, infrastructure, wildlife, and the overall quality of life for those who live in and around this area. One of the biggest issues residents of the area seem to have around the new development is safety. Pedestrian and child safety are of utmost concern to us, particularly in light of the proposed development. According to the blueprints, the road will cross over 2 pedestrian walkways, one of which leads directly to LaSalle Public School. This raises several important questions, and I know you addressed that as well, sorry. But where will the stop signs be located along this new road, particularly in relation to the pedestrian walkways? Will the town consider providing additional school crossing guards to ensure the safety of students, particularly during peak times when children are walking to and from school? Are there plans to implement any traffic calming measures, such as speed bumps or pedestrian crosswalks, with enhanced signage to slow down vehicles and improve safety in this area? Another concern is the impact of increased traffic, especially considering there is only one entrance and exit into this cove. We are particularly worried about the strain on local infrastructure. Has a traffic study been conducted on Fields Avenue and Alfred, the cross street, which is already a busy thoroughfare? With the proposed construction of 14 semi-detached units, it is reasonable to expect a significant increase in traffic volume. What measures do the town plan to take to accommodate the increase, particularly during peak hours, and also with concern to safety vehicles? We also are concerned about the parking situation. With the semi-detached will the semi-detached units have assigned parking spaces, or will parking be on street? If no designated spaces are provided, where will the overflow parking go? Given that each household is likely to have multiple vehicles, the absence of sufficient parking provisions could lead to increased street parking. This could create congestion, reduce visibility for drivers and pedestrians, and pose safety risks. How does the town plan to address these potential issues? And additionally, we are deeply concerned about the impact of the development on local wildlife. I know you said that a study has been done. However, we do live in this neighborhood. We do know there's fox snakes. We do know there's painted turtles. It is a home to protected species. The painted turtle, fox snake, they're also listed as species of concern. The proposed construction can disrupt critical habitats and migration corridors for these species, as well as affect the broader ecosystem. Has an environmental impact study been conducted to assess the potential risks to local wildlife, including endangered species and their habitats? What measures will be taken to mitigate the potential impact of construction and development on these species and the environment? And will the town consider setting aside protected green spaces or implementing wildlife corridors to ensure the survival and movement of these species, particularly during construction and in the long term? In conclusion, we appreciate your attention to these important concerns and thank you for considering the impact that this development could have on both the community and the local environment. It is our hope that council will carefully evaluate all of these issues: safety, traffic, parking, and wildlife conservation, to ensure that any new development is sustainable, safe, and beneficial to all members of the community. I look forward to hearing your responses to our concerns and trust that council will take these matters into account as the development moves forward. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Ms. Lawton, thank you very much. Apologies on not reading your name correctly, but thank you very much for your presentation. Looking to my council colleagues, obviously you've heard the presentations. The delegate brought up a number of concerns, and I've seen my council colleagues writing. I look to questions from council to be brought forth for administration to answer. Councilor Riccio Spagnolo.
Thank you, through you. So Mrs. Lawton did bring up some concerns that I also received through email or phone calls, specifically with traffic, safety, the trail being gone for children to walk to and from to school. She asked the question that I actually had: is there any measures that we have in place to assist with the new development, as well as the children, like for crossing guards for the schools? Is there any measures that are going to come in place from the town to I guess ease a little bit of that stress for the residents in that area, as well as the children that are going to and from school and the pedestrians? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I might let Michael Capucci start off, and then I'll follow up because he was a little more involved with this project than me. But.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. So, yeah, there was a lot of thought about, is it possible to put up the site plan onto the, screen by chance? So first to talk about, I guess, just stepping back, looking at the traffic that this site would generate, based on the Institute of Traffic Engineers trip generation rates for an area of this size, in the worst of times, in the PM peak, there will be 10 vehicles that this court will generate. So that's about one car, that's 10 cars in the 2-hour PM peak. So the significant traffic volume generated, I don't believe is much of a concern in terms of traffic impact to the overall network. The trail system right now crosses the street below at International, which we have ADOA approved crossing there. So all the crossings within this Fields Court or Fields bulb here will meet all the required connection points. And so the connection there along at the intersection, the stop sign, one of the questions was stop sign would be before the crossing. So these were all things that we kind of considered while we were looking at the proposal. We feel that the applicant's drawing here of how the trail is going to be connected at 2 locations there is suitable. As it relates to the traffic crossing guards, I don't believe we would be or had looked at adding the traffic crossing guards at this location due to the low impact of vehicles crossing at Fields Court. And sorry, I don't know if I answered all your questions there.
Thank you for the answers. I don't think it's low traffic when it comes to the school, because it's quite busy. I drive my daughter to school there daily, and it is very busy with a lot of walkers as well as a lot of parents that are driving their kids to school. I understand the schools, of course, would like the kids to be on buses, but the kids that are in that residential area are not eligible for buses, us being one of them. So it's pretty high traffic on the way to school. So like 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:15, and then of course after school 3:30, 4 o'clock. It's quite busy with a lot of pedestrians and kids walking. So that trail will not be available anymore, correct? So if that trail's not there, they would have to walk around. And I know there is one crossing guard that's there now on the corner, which is great. But I'm just wondering for safety measures for those children and pedestrians.
Yeah, I can address that. The trail is still gonna be there, and my comment there about the traffic wasn't talking about the overall network, it was looking at this site in its contribution to the traffic, already in the area. So in the PM peak, it'll add about 10 trips generally. The pedestrians are on the east side of that street, so they won't be crossing the existing traffic flows, only what's on Fields Court. And based on the available routes, they can cross through that existing trail there, or they can continue down. Is that Sacred Heart, the next one over? Or anyways, the further street to the north. So sorry, that's what I meant by the additional traffic not being significant.
Councillor Spagnuolo, looking to you, Councillor Carrick.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, I guess, I'm looking at the map there, so we're talking about the green and then the yellow, so that's inside the development itself, and they would go across. I guess the concern might be coming across and using that avenue instead of walking down the other street there. So if you come across from Sacred Heart and Fields, see where it connects to the yellow? Is that Sacred Heart there? I can't see, there's no name on it. That, would there be a worry of the kids crossing there to take advantage of going across the street, so that they're not walking down the street there, they're actually using the sidewalk by being able to go across the street, I guess is the one question. And I guess we'll ask the question about the private property part with the trail that Mr. Fazio had mentioned, so we need clarification for that. And also to the east then, all the protected areas, so that's in our ownership and we have no future plans to do anything with that. Am I correct, other than leave it in a natural state?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Carrick, for the question. Yes, that would be the intent for those lands. Aside from the fact that Mayfair eventually has to be, so further to the east, Mayfair eventually will be constructed to the south. So that connection will happen in time, but otherwise, nothing with those lands. And then on the discussion about the trails and the sidewalks, looking at that crossing that is right by the bend there, I haven't done the analysis myself, but likely the treatment for a type of pedestrian crossing, given the traffic volumes on that roadway, would be some simple signage at the crossing. So that could be something we could work with the developer on, or we could also look at the configuration of where that trail is, and if it should maybe be where the green line is as opposed to where the yellow is. So that we could take the comments that council's made tonight and perhaps look at the configuration of the trails and sidewalks to ensure either that crossing is signed appropriately and it does fit those guidelines, or looking at the reconfiguration of some of the trails.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Fazio did call my name out regarding the trail in this location. I've been with the town for 14 years. I can't use this comment very often now, but it was before my time when that trail was constructed. Mr. Fazio is correct. It does go across private property. As of today, Mr. Fazio and the property owner could go and have that trail removed. It's not owned by the town at this point in time. How it got there, when it got there, I'm unclear. I would have to go through and see if there's any sort of old agreements that called that out and things of that nature. I'm not aware of that at this point, but it does appear to cross on private property, but through this subdivision and through this process, as Mr. Fazio indicated, that property will then become ours, and it will make that trail legal with respect to property ownership. But as Mr. Osborne had mentioned, in discussions just sitting around here, right now there is two proposed trail crossings, one right at the intersection, which people will normally expect a crossing at an intersection, and then there's one just before the bend, proposed for just before the bend. Through this discussion, there may be an opportunity to remove that entire trail piece that leads up to the bend, bring everyone along Geniac cross fields at Geniac, and then that piece of sidewalk that's supposed to go in, change that to trail and link it back up to where and into the school lot. This way that there's only one crossing and it's at the intersection. With respect to crossing guards, if there's not one here at that location, in the future, those are dealt with through the police department, and should additional crossing guards be needed, the request can be made through the police department. They'll go and monitor those situations and make that determination in the future when those situations occur.
Thank you very much, and I'm good, thanks.
Councillor Reno.
Thank you, Your Worship. A number of the questions have been answered in the last few minutes. Thank you, Peter. But a couple questions. First of all, the drain that goes through there, the Lafferty drain, is that in the proponent's ownership currently, or is that our drain?
I believe the land is on the proponent's land, but it is a municipal drain, so we have rights to the Drainage Act for maintenance and things like that on that drain.
Okay, and at the end of this, everything to the left of the court will be then conveyed to the town, so we will then gain access back, or not access, but ownership of the drain. We'll gain back ownership of the trail if it is to stay there. All that stuff will then become ours.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Burns.
I believe the asphalt sidewalk went in through the school board when they built the school. Back in the time I was on council, not 100%, but you might have to look at Strawberry Heights agreement, Peter, 1997, somewhere around there, I believe. And at that time, the biggest concession to the town was the woodlot, and we wanted to maintain that in the state that you see it today, which has been done, and that was graciously given to us by the developers of the time. We also fully well knew back then that this would be the extension of Strawberry Heights and would be completed at such time as the proponents wanted to come back. So he basically, the two gentlemen there built all those houses from International, Sacred Heart through, and I kind of have a recollection of 245 versus the 197, but that's neither here nor there. But that's basically the history from that time, and that's how we got here today. And I think it's a perfect infilling for that community. I've lived in that area myself, and my kids went to Sacred Heart School. It makes a nice price home for retirees like myself that may want to move there and be closer to our church in that area and have less grass to cut. So I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Looking to my council colleagues, any other Councillor Reno.
Yeah, just one question that goes back to Ms. Lawton and her concern with the stop signs, because it was in her letter and she did repeat it tonight. And I understand by looking at the diagram that there's going to be some confusion because there's a trail crossing and then there's an intersection to the left. Could we speak to that at all? Is there anything that we can hash out tonight that might help us move forward?
Maybe I'll, and if Mr. Kikuchi has anything, he can add on, but I think when we look at what Mr. Mara mentioned about either we keep the trail where it is and look at the recommended signage for pedestrian crossing that type of road, and make sure those signs are in place, pedestrian crossing signs, or look at the reconfiguration of the trail itself. As far as the stop sign, there will only be the one stop sign onto Alfred, yes, onto Alfred. So there'll be the one stop sign there, but further back, I don't know how many meters back we're going there, but I think we would look at what the appropriate signage would be for that crossing and require the developer to install that should the crossing stay there.
Okay, and if I may, may I ask a question of Ms. Lawton? Is that appropriate?
We'll allow it on this occasion there, Councillor Carrick.
Okay, Kristen, I know you're not gonna speak for the entire neighborhood, but what I see in front of me is a very well-done connection to that trail. The trail was something that many of the letters have come across and have talked about, truncating the trail and things like that. I'm seeing a very nice connection around that, cul-de-sac, which then does not involve any traffic until it gets back out to the street. And it's been alluded to that there's a possibility that we could take that old trail out. And I see the new trail or the new sidewalk as being a better alternative for safety. How do you feel about if the town was to remove that old piece of trail and offer up the safer alternative on the sidewalks? And I apologize for putting you on the spot, but I mean, this is one of your main concerns is the safety.
Just one moment. I'm just going to stop right there, Ms. Lawton. I realize that I had said you could, but I've just been, again, apprised of, in her worship's absence, I don't want to violate any of the rules, so I'm looking to administration to see if Mr. Mara or a member of his team can answer that question.
Yeah, we were talking, but what we were referring to is not changing the entire green into a trail. So in essence, again, I wish I had a pointer. I don't have a pointer, but the piece of trail that currently goes onto private property, we would remove that in its entirety. So you would have the trail along. Yes, so that piece of trail would be removed in its entirety. And so along Alfred, there is an existing trail which comes up. That image looks fine. So along Alfred, there's that existing trail that would continue northerly on Alfred. It currently crosses at this intersection, which will futurely be extended. And then from that green piece, just from that trail, just to the west, would become a 3-meter wide trail. The rest of the sidewalk around the cul-de-sac would still remain in its entirety with a sidewalk. So that is what we were referring to with respect to removing the crossing at the bend, but keeping the crossing at the intersection of where typical crossings occur. And this way the stop sign at the intersection still stays, and that would be a bit of a compromise with respect to the ultimate design. So again, without having pointers and things of that nature, I'm trying to explain it the best I can without making the situation confusing. But we've heard the concerns. We have an ability to address the concerns where we remove and keep one crossing of the new road. It will be at the intersection, and that interim crossing, we will remove any other crossing along field, that future extension of field, so there is no mid-block crossings or anything of that nature. Just one crossing at the intersection where it currently exists today, and that will be maintained. It's at the stop sign, at that intersection with the stop signs will follow the appropriate Ontario traffic manuals with respect to where they're located relative to the crosswalk and the stop bars and all of that. They will meet the proper engineering designs.
Okay, actually, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the new picture coming up because I was not considering the trail on the left. I was fixated on the one on the right, which is the one that you had talked about removing. So it makes a lot more sense if that trail's not there and we have a proper crossing at the end of the street where a proper street sign could go and things like that. So thank you for your answer.
Ms. Beggs, I see that you have some information to share as well.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just to build on what Mr. Mara is saying, we're hearing a lot of feedback from the residents and council regarding the sidewalk and safety and the future trail system and connections to be made. So tonight's decision from council is for a resolution in support of the draft plan of subdivision. Detailed design of the subdivision hasn't happened yet, so which is a good thing. We're able to take some of this feedback back to the consultant and the team and make some necessary tweaks to the drawings and have those be incorporated into the plan of subdivision proposal from a detailed design perspective, and then move forward with the subdivision agreement. So those sort of minutia and nitty gritty, they haven't really been established yet, and we appreciate the feedback and what we're hearing from council and members of the public, and we'll take that back to the next stage of the process.
That answer your question, Councillor Reno? Looking to my council colleagues, any further questions? Councillor Carrick.
Sorry, that was pretty much what I was trying to get at, and just the alignment of the other one that's not on our property or their property yet. So as long as we get that, we're all happy. Thank you.
Seeing that all questions have been answered, I've got a lengthy recommendation before us, and I've checked with the clerk. I'm not going to read the recommendations. I'm simply going to refer to letters A through E, but I will read everything else. The recommendation before council today is that the report of the Manager of Planning and Development dated October 15th, 2024, PD 38, 2024, regarding the Fields Court subdivision proposal be received, and that council approve the applicant's request to remove the holding symbol from the above noted lands once the required development agreement is properly executed by the corporation, and that council pass a resolution in support of the applicant's request to grant draft plan of approval for the proposed Fields Court plan of subdivision in accordance with the draft plan drawings prepared by Verhagen Land Surveyors, a division of J.D. Barnes Limited, dated August 20th, 24, subject to the following draft plan approval conditions. And those conditions are listed, condition A, B, C, D, and E. And that once completed, a copy of this council resolution is forwarded to the Manager of Planning Services for the County of Essex, Ms. Rebecca Belanger, together with a copy of the staff report. Looking to my council colleagues for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Carrick, seconded by Councillor Burns. Any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, I'm calling the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item number 4, the Mayfair and Maple intersection. Michael Capucci, Supervisor of Engineering, will present this report. Mr. Capucci.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to pass this one on to, we look alike, but I'm going to pass this one on to Curtis, sitting across there. He's been itching to knock this one out of the park, so I'm going to throw that over to him.
Thank you, Curtis. Welcome to council. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you and good evening, Deputy Mayor and members of council. So this is to discuss the intersection of Mayfair and Maple, which is one of the long established areas of LaSalle. This area has been around since the 1950s. Mayfair is a collector road and has always had the stop control on it. Maple is a local road which has never had stop control. This is because of the way that the area was developed originally. Maple came first, and then Mayfair and the lands to the south were then brought in later on, including a school, the LaSalle Public School, which was brought in 2001. So this is the reason why the stop signs are currently on the collector road and not on the local road. Now, priority is typically given to the higher classification to ensure the proper use of the road network. So we have received a request for an always stop at this intersection. We completed work to review the traffic studies of what's happening there now and traffic counts, to review whether a warrant is needed for a always stop. As shown in my report in Appendix A, none of the 3 warrant analyses were satisfied, and therefore an always stop is not warranted at this time. What we have reviewed is that since the stop signs are currently on the collector road and there are no stop signs on the local road, it makes sense to switch the stop signs as similarly was done at the Michigan and Mayfair intersection, Michigan and Maple intersection, which was done about a year ago, I believe. We recommend the same recommendation to switch the stop signs and create a stop on Maple and a through street on Mayfair. If council is not accepting of this recommendation, the alternative is to do the same solution as as Maple and Michigan and create an always stop. Thank you.
Thank you for the report. Looking to my council colleagues for question. Councillor Carrick.
I'm sorry, just for some clarification. I don't think that's a throughway. I think the other one was a 4-way, Michigan and Maple. And this is just a 1-way, right? So am I not correct? There was a 4-way stop that was put in at Michigan and Maple, as opposed to just a 2-way. So I think, and it didn't meet the warrants at the time, and this was not meeting the warrants. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, at Michigan and Maple was the same situation where it was recommended to switch the stop signs from the collector road to the local road. After that recommendation, through notice from residents and through council, it was determined to not follow through with that recommendation and to leave it as an always stop.
Quick, sorry if I might interject real quick. It was the stop was on Michigan previously. The recommendation was to flip them, but we went with an always stop. So out there today, there's an always stop at Michigan and Maple. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're saying that, then you're saying the recommendation is the same, then the recommendation should be the four-way stop, because that's what Maple and Michigan is now. I get the first part of it, but the second part of it is what it is, so that's the confusing part.
Mr. Osborne.
Maybe I can just add a little bit to that. It is the same technical situation. I think the difference we're at here is the timing of when we're at council with it. So in the previous situation, we implemented the change based off our traffic information that we had, and partway through it became an issue with the residents. It came to council, so we kind of delayed the process of making the switch. In this case, we did the review, the assessment of the intersection. It comes out with the same results, saying the intersection should be switched, but we haven't started the process of switching it. So we're at council now with a recommendation to switch the stop signs. That would be our recommendation. However, understanding the history of what happened with the other one, we're putting it before council as the option A of what our recommendation is, but also the alternative is to go with what we did with the other intersection, making it all way.
Councillor Carrick, do you have a supplemental before I go to Councillor Burns?
You can go to Councillor Burns. I'm okay, thanks.
Councillor Burns.
Well, I'm just for leaving it the way it is. I travel that road every Sunday to go to church. To me, it's not an issue. The residents were adamant the last time for Maple. I think there were more accidents there, but without knowing how many accidents we've had there, you're changing fundamental old values that have been around. My favorite expression is Moby Dick was a minnow coming up the Kenora. So I don't see any need to do this. I really don't. You'd have a hard time to convince me of anything other than something from the chief that there's been very serious, of the police, very serious accidents there that need to resolve that issue, and that has not been presented. So I'll hold that for maybe another meeting, or I'm not sure what council will do with it now, but thank you for your input.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Sir, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. The one point I wanted to mention that I didn't touch on is that Mayfair is a collector road, and it is proposed to be extended to the south in the future, as we've discussed in the previous section of this meeting. That is one of the reasons why we have suggested to remove the stop signs on Mayfair, because in the future it will be the through street all the way to Victory and shouldn't have stop signs as they're shown here at Maple. Maple is a local road and the traffic volumes are significantly less, so that is where the stop signs should be. Thank you.
Councillor Reno, you were next, sir.
My question, although he wasn't here, I'm going to pick on our new chief of police. We've gone through this exercise a number of months ago, where it was suggested that we just flip the signs. And I understand why we would flip the signs, because one's going to be busier than the other one was traditionally. However, my question is, in your experience, have you, and I should preempt this with all the issues that the last time we were going to do this, and we were going to flip them, and we, as noted, we had a lot of community involvement in that opinion. Do you see this as a normal thing? Do you see an opportunity for more accidents because we're basically trying to reprogram people's minds that have been programmed for many, many years. I, as a new driver, if I drive through any new area, I'm looking for signs. However, someone who's lived there for 20 or 30 years might take a long time before they notice that sign and what could be the potential danger in between. I just wanted to kind of get your take on what we're looking to do here.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. I think that it would take a tremendous amount of, I'll call it advertising or marketing before you make a change like that. Speaking from experience in Chatham-Kent, we did that at an intersection on a county road. And I thought for sure we were going to have significant collisions there, and we didn't notice that, but the municipality did a tremendous job marketing that in advance so that citizens were aware of that change. But that's my one limited experience with this particular situation.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Councilor Regis-Bagnol, I know you had a question.
Thank you, through you, I did. It was actually to the chief, just to ask if that intersection, if it's been problematic, but I know you're new, and if you already answered Mr. Renault's question, but just wanted to know if it's been a problematic area, if it's something that we need to progress on, or if it's just something that is really not needed at this time. But I know you're relatively new.
Sitting here today, I don't have the data, but I can certainly get it for you.
Mr. Burns, sir, I saw your hand.
Just to follow up, I moved here in 1973. International had 2 houses on it. That was all bush. I look at Mayfair, got on council in 1991. It didn't go as far as it did, but as we extended the Strawberry Heights all the way through to International, it developed. It may be 20 more years before we put Mayfair through. First, you're going to have the environmental fight to put it through, and I don't see enough traffic there to justify switching this at this time. So again, that'll be another one point that I'll bring up at a future meeting. Thank you for allowing me the input, Your Worship.
Before you, Councilor Carrick, I saw Mr. Mara. Mr. Mara, deferring to Mr. Osborne.
Just one point of clarification, in the traffic analysis, there was an accident count. I think there was 2 accidents there. That's part of the analysis of a 4-way stop, and that didn't meet the criteria. So there was 2 accidents there in the last 3 years.
Councilor Carrick, follow up.
Just so I'm understanding this again. So I'm okay with actually the recommendation because it actually stops traffic from sailing through, keeps it going, so the kids that are crossing will actually have to stop, so it keeps it consistent. I'm okay with that. It's where Maple is running through, then they have to try to dodge across to get to school. So flipping it the other way forces them to stop on Maple, and that is a collector, and it'll go through, and I think that'll be even safer in my estimation. So I would be okay with this recommendation, as long as it's not a 4-way stop.
Thank you to my council colleagues for the comments. I'm looking to anybody else for comments. Mr. CAO, any comments, sir?
Thank you, Your Acting Worship. I think anytime the municipality, again, I just would like to identify, I believe this came from a request from our resident was looking for this. Am I correct? So that's why it's before council. Some of you may be asking, why am I dealing with this today? It's because it's been brought forward by resident, and the process is that it's coming forward to members of council. We understand that these decisions can be somewhat controversial, and that changing of habits is difficult at times. However, what we're looking for is, again, from a technical perspective, what are the legal and recommended solutions for a particular situation. What the recommendation before you is doing that. We understand that council may or may not agree with that. They may or may not choose a different direction, but our job is to give you what is the sound recommendation coming forward from the principles that we have. At that point, if you would like to do something different, that's certainly your right to do that. But our responsibility is to go through what the benchmarks are, what the best practices are in consultation with police and with other agencies to look to see what is the best solution for this particular situation. And that's why you have it before you. We also understand that the reality of it is that council, when we're changing these things, it seems as though we can make no one happy. And that seems as though we can't make everybody happy. And so we can do what technically is the right thing to do for the immediate and the long term, but we also have to recognize that in the short term there will be some people that are inconvenienced and will ask questions as to why. What we're trying to do is just perhaps get a better process in place that we had at the former location, where we had a much longer convoluted process which ended up with a four-way stop, which again in that situation did not meet the warrants either. We want to try to avoid those to the greatest degree possible, and so that's why this is being brought forward in the manner that it is.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Looking to my council colleagues for any further questions for administration on what's before us. If not, then I'll read the recommendation that the report of the Supervisor of Engineering dated September 23rd, 2024, PW 372024, regarding the Mayfair and Maple intersection be received, and that the stop sign be located on Maple and removed from Mayfair. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councilor Carrick, looking for a seconder. Councilor Reno. Moved by Councilor Carrick, seconded by Councilor Reno. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. I'm calling the question before you. All in favor? Opposed? That motion.
My vote recorded as well, please.
Thank you, Councilor Burns. Your vote in the negative shall be recorded. That motion carries. Item 5, Local Road Infrastructure Enhancement Cost Analysis. Mr. Jonathan Osborne, Director of Public Works, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Akpada. The report before you tonight is a high-level review of what it would cost to enhance our local streets that have a rural type cross-section, upgrading that to have more of our urban today's type cross-section. So when we looked at, I'm going to share my screen so we have a bit of a picture. When we look at the town, we have about, I think it's 277 kilometers of roadway, about 144 kilometers of that has the modern type cross section. The balance has an older type cross section. And when we get into the report here, we're really looking at our local roads in the urban boundary. So that consists of about 42 kilometers of roadway in the urban boundary that do not have curb and gutter, so the older type cross section. So when you think about those 42 kilometers, primarily, and it's on this screen, it would be blue, the blue roads that we're looking at. Primarily, you think of Old LaSalle and Oliver Farms. So we'll kind of picture those two areas when we're going through this report. But Old LaSalle typically has one sidewalk, old ditches, like little roadside ditches or ditch infills, street lights. Sometimes there's a storm sewer in place, but typically not. There's older water mains, and the sanitary sewers are in good condition. In Oliver Farms, there aren't any sidewalks. There are storm sewers, smaller storm sewers with a series of roadside swales and catch basins. The water mains are older in there as well, and the sanitary is in good condition. In Oliver Farms, we also have a preliminary detailed design for upgrading that subdivision or that area. We've applied for a number of grants to carry out that work, but have not been successful. So that project's been there, but just unable to quite fund it to go ahead with it. So in order to make the upgrades to the roadway from what we have to what the enhanced version would be. So this is a kind of a typical cross section that you might see. Make that a little bigger. This is Stewart Avenue. So here's the roadway. You can see some of the underground infrastructure, the roadway, and the open ditch. If we're looking at just replacing what we have, we'll go to the next page, and you would see we would just replace kind of the asphalt of the road, replace streetlights, and potentially, if there was a sidewalk, replace the sidewalk. When it comes to enhancements, what we would be looking at is installing a storm sewer, if there is no storm sewer there, excavating the road base to a deeper depth and installing a more appropriate road base, widening the road and adding adequate sub-drainage and catch basins, then adding the curb and gutter, and likely adding an additional sidewalk or some sort of active transportation on the opposite side of the road. So there's another cross-section of Huron Avenue if we were to upgrade it. So the orange is basically what's there and what we'd be replacing, and the green is what we'd be enhancing. Some of the benefits to going through with some of this work and doing these enhancements are that the roadway has more strength and it would provide a longer lifespan. Having the curb provides more defined roadway and helps with controlling parking, controlling driveway access, and snow removal. There's an increased curb appeal, an increased level of safety when you have the curb and gutter there. The storm drainage is more controlled within the storm sewers to today's design standards. The less water in the road base, which helps with the freeze-thaw cycle, and the mill and paves. As mill and paves happen, the more often you do them, the less effective they become. So first mill and pave is a very effective strategy. As you continue over and over with mill and paving, it becomes less productive as you move along. So the approximate cost, and this is again high level, of the replacement work that we already have of infrastructure we have is about 126 million. The approximate cost to do the enhancement work is an additional 147 million. That totals 273 million. So the funding for the replacement work is funded through our asset management planning. Currently, our core infrastructure is approximately 80% funded, which is a very good number. It's better than a lot of our municipal comparators. Still not 100%, but in pretty good shape that way. But the enhancement costs are not accounted for or not funded, so that's an important point to keep in mind. And a couple options for funding these types of things is to, one, apply for a grant, which we do, yet usually unsuccessful. Another is potentially the local improvement process. This isn't something that the town has historically done a lot, but it's basically where the property owners will pay on a per front foot basis for the enhancements that are being done. There's two ways to initiate it. One, if the residents initiate it. If they do, 67% of the residents need to be in favor of it. Or if the town initiates it, 50% of the residents would have to be against it in order to kind of stop the project. Again, historically, in my time, we haven't done the local improvement process too much. When it comes to arterial and collector roads, so what I've discussed and the costs I've discussed is just local roads. When it comes to arterial and or collector roads, those enhancements that would be done have a benefit to more than just the individuals living on the street. There's more of a benefit to other residents and neighborhoods as their collector and arterial roads. So when those projects come forward, we'll be looking at the appropriate design for those roads on a case-by-case basis as those projects come along. A couple other things just to consider when thinking about going from what we have to an enhanced level is that LaSalle has, we consider high quality of life here. We have high level of infrastructure, high level of service for our infrastructure. So when we do new developments and new roadways, we are getting that high level. We struggle with some of these older areas to kind of maintain or to get those areas to that higher level of service that much of the new parts of town are getting. When developers do build their new subdivisions, they often will remark, well, this street doesn't have a curb and sidewalks on both sides, and why do we have to build that if the town doesn't have all their roads up to that standard? We can easily explain that, but nevertheless, it's sometimes the comments we get from the development community. And when we do get into these older areas and have to do water main replacements, which is inevitable, we will be digging up a good section of the road anyways, and it is fairly disruptive. So if we're ever going to be doing enhancements in these areas, when we do the water main replacements, that is, you know, the logical time to do the enhancements and do the reconstruction of the road. Again, the funding mechanism though has to be in place. So part of the recommendation is for council to receive the report, but also in the future that administration bring a more detailed report forward, outlining a bit of the funding options that we might have. Part of the future report really ties into where we want to grow and enhance our asset management program and asset management planning between Public Works and Finance, and that future report at some date would kind of play into that. So I'm available for any questions.
Looking at my council colleagues for questions. Councilor Reno, I see you.
Yep, no question, just a comment. Thank you, Jonathan. I mean, this came from a question that I had made a little while ago. It came from a resident that has recently moved to Old LaSalle and was quite frustrated that we still lived in an old town. So what I was looking for is absolutely in the report. You know, when he asked me, you know, how hard would it be to replace them all, now we have a definite answer, and a costing per foot, which can lead to further discussions about neighborhood improvements, but probably won't. But nonetheless, we have something, a guiding document here that I can refer people to so that they understand a little better what challenges we're up against. So thank you very much for the report. It is appreciated.
Mr. Militia, to you, sir.
Thank you, Your Acting Worship. Just to elaborate on Mr. Osborne's comments, because we internally have been struggling with this for some time now. The residents will look at it from one aspect, and rightfully so. They live on the streets, they're looking for improvements to their infrastructure. But I would also like to point out that one of the points that Mr. Osborne had mentioned is that historically we have used, in order to rejuvenate infrastructure of in I call it historic LaSalle, we use the mill and pave program, which many of you know are grinding the first few inches of the road and replacing it. It creates a very smooth traveled portion for for now what has become a very short period of time. And so while I understand that the residents are grappling with this for their own reasons, and rightfully so, I think municipally we're grappling with it because as Mr. Osborne has expressed, the mill and pave program is no longer as effective as it used to be. And so we will need to get into the historic areas of our municipality where those homes were built on roads which were designed at standards of that time, not today's day and age. But we are going to have to get into those areas and start a more aggressive reconstruction program than we ever have. Otherwise, we will, as the former director of Public Works often tells me, we're just painting the road black. And that's effectively what we will be doing. I think the original mill and pave process was to lengthen the life of the road by somewhere between 8 to 15 years, depending on the type of road. I don't think we're getting that anymore in some of these roads that we're getting. So while financially it is a significant amount, which is unbudgeted and unplanned for at this point in time, we will need to cross this bridge slowly as they become available, because those roads in the historic areas of our municipality are going to need some significant work, whether they be water main or sanitary lines underneath the roads, or whether they be the roads themselves. And so we were going to have to grapple with that. Folks in that area, and solutions may vary depending on what area it is, what infrastructure is there. But I can tell you one thing, for council to agree and for administration to put forward and council to agree that we will go into those historic areas and create a full urban cross-section like you would see on any new development, with sidewalks and trails and streetlights and curbs and gutters and road widths that are would allow for the things that they currently allow for. That is a very, very expensive proposition. We will likely come somewhere between that and what currently is there is likely where we'll find the sweet spot. But my long-winded dissertation here is that understanding that we don't have a funding program in place for this today, in the not too distant future, we are going to have to find a way, whether through government programs or whatever, to go into these older areas and rejuvenate infrastructure in a much more aggressive way than we have in the past. And I know that, just one last point, I know that we've had over the last couple of council meetings, and included in tonight's, we have some younger people here as part of their educational journey, learning about local government and attending. So with all those nice graphs we had, I think there's 4 engineers in the room. You can get an honorary engineering degree from one of them on your way out. I think the guy at the end will probably be the one signing the paperwork, but thank you for participating and listening in on what is a very technical exercise from time to time.
Thank you, Mr. Militia. Looking to my council colleagues for any further questions for the team. Seeing none, Mr. Osborne's completed his report. The recommendation that the report of the Director of Public Works dated October 24th, 2024, PW 37-2024 regarding local road infrastructure enhancement cost analysis be received, and that Council direct administration to review the road network enhancements and funding opportunities in greater detail through our asset management program and provide an updated report at a future council meeting. Moved by Councilor Reno, seconded by Councilor Riccio Spagnolo. Any discussion on the motions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That motion carries. Moving to the consent agenda, there's some correspondence here from the Town of Cobourg, Good Roads, the third quarter reports, summaries of reports to council. Looking to my council colleagues, would you like to pass omnibus, or is there anything that you'd like to remove and discuss? Seeing nothing, looking for a mover and a seconder on receiving. Councilor Reno, Councilor Carrick are in before us. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Item J, Essex County Council Members Matters Highlights, October 16th, 2024. Looking at the highlights from Essex County Council. And the recommendation is the County Council highlights for October 16th be received. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councilor Riccio Spagnolo, seconded by Councilor Reno. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Item K, questions and statements by council members. Councilor Carrick.
I just want to say, Monday's ceremony was awesome. Everybody here did a great job. Our town staff, everybody that attended, the committee, the people that participated. Jeff, you did a good job at the top, that was awesome. And Mike, you did an excellent job representing the town. Thank you very much for that. And it was a great ceremony. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Councilor Burns.
I had the opportunity to go to the St. Clair Saints win on Saturday night. And in 1999, I was there when they won as AKO, and I was there when they won the other night. Tremendous turnout. A lot of Western fans were in, and hats off to them. I think they did one great job there. The only other comment I would make is my hats off to the mayor and deputy mayor for the county report that the county is going to look at those 2 stoplights that we were requesting. So hats off for you for movement on that, and I echo Councilor Carrick's remarks on the Remembrance Day, and there was no rain, and it wasn't as cold as we've seen, so that was very well. And staff did a tremendous job, Owen and his people. Thank you.
Councilor Reno.
Just a few little comments, as have been mentioned. Yes, the warmer weather is always appreciative on the cold mouthpiece. So although we weren't as spoiled as we have in the last 2 years, it was still a workable day. But I just wanted to mention something that kind of may escape most people if they haven't been to more than 1 or 2 of our services, and that's the attention that was put into the program this year. I think the program was done very well. there's really no recommendation, or there's no the right word to say. There's no accepted way of doing the program. It's usually a one-page thing. It gets the information out there. This year there was a dedication to a long-serving volunteer, and when I opened the program, that's the first thing I saw, and it was greatly appreciated, not only by the committee, but by the people that opened that book. So the little extension that probably cost double what it did last year, I think was very well appreciated and very well received by everyone. So thank you very much for the extra attention to detail.
Thank you, Councillor Reno. Councillor Richo Spagnolo.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. So, one, I'm outgoing all of my colleagues. I was at the Remembrance Day ceremony yesterday, and I was at Villanova today for a presentation, and I was able to see the student who spoke yesterday, the president, and I just was very in awe of both speakers from Sandwich and Villanova yesterday on how well they spoke, and just how amazing it was to see youth in our community doing great things, but also delivering beautiful messages. That's one. And then the second thing I'd like to just say is, Saturday I had the opportunity to represent the town at the Maryville Gala that Mr. Carrick is part of, and it was a wonderful job. Such a great opportunity to be there. As we all know, Maryville offers a lot of services within the town of LaSalle, so it was just great to be part of that event. And kudos to Mr. Carrick and his team at Maryville, who held a wonderful gala that night. So thank you.
Looking to any other statements or questions from council members? Seeing none, Councillor Carrick, I have one, and it's inappropriate for me to make my discussion as a chair, so I'm going to cede the chair to you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Through you, one of the things that we brought up here is Remembrance Day, and members of the community have approached me and have asked for us to discuss an item. The item specifically is a Veterans Crosswalk. As a veteran myself and as a member of the Legion, I know that there's a number of rules for poppies and for pictorial representations of things that we do. I've looked at some of the crosswalks that have been laid across not only the province of Ontario, within the County of Essex and around Canada, and I'm drawn to the crosswalk that's been laid in Petawawa. Why I say Petawawa is Petawawa is home of one RCR and one Canadian Royal Canadian Regiment, and that's also where the Royal Canadian Regiment Battle School is. In the Battle School come Sergeant Majors. Having worked for Sergeant Majors, I'm quite clear that no crosswalk in Petawawa, even with the municipality's behest, would be laid without a Sergeant Major's approval. So I'm looking for some assistance in directing that administration prepares a report regarding the feasibility and financial implications of installing a Veterans Crosswalk at Normandy at the crossing located at the base of Cenotaph Park for our consideration during the 2025 budget deliberations.
So I would receive that information and look for council to make a recommendation or put forward a vote?
Yes.
Or on behalf of what? A crosswalk? Yes. Oh, sorry, Mr. Burns, go ahead.
Motion to refer that to budgets and have administration put it as an add-on with costing and feasibility of the location as well.
And Ms. Richo Spagnolo is seconding it, and anybody have any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Everyone's for and no one opposed? That carries.
Do I get the chair back, Councillor Carrick, for the record?
Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Councillor Carrick. Reporting on closed session, there's no Item L, notices of motion. Looking to my council colleagues, are there any notices of motion to be brought forth today? Seeing none. Item M, closed session. There's no closed session to report on. Bylaws. Recommendations that the following bylaws be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Bylaw 8935, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8600, the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw as amended. Bylaw 8936, a bylaw to authorize the execution of developer's severance agreement with Phil Joseph Belair, Pamela Ann Bezaire, and Sarah Janine Hutchinson. Bylaw 8937, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8600, the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw as amended. Looking for a mover and a seconder on the bylaws. Counselor Reacher Spagnolo, Counselor Burns. Any comment on the discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Confirmatory bylaw O, recommendation that bylaw 8938 be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Counselor Reno, support from Counselor Carrick. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the question's been called. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. You have the schedule of meetings before you. The Police Services Board, the Committee of Adjustment, Parks and Rec, the regular council meeting. Looking to move to item Q, the adjournment. Thank you. We are adjourned.